Today's lesson is about composition of functions. This is taking two separate equations and putting them together to evaluate one answer. The most important thing is the notation and understanding how to use the notation. So let's take a look at a couple of things. Usually you will see this or this given to you. That notation, if you see given to you, is actually of no help to us. So we need to know how to read this and then how to change it into the more helpful form. So first of all, this little circle here is not multiplication. That we actually use the word of. We would read this right here as f of g of x. And this one would be read g of f of x. Now, as I said, those forms are not helpful. So if you notice, the order of these does not change when we write it in this form. What we are doing instead is this little dot here is going away, and we are making f the main function, and inside of f is g. Okay, whichever one comes first here is the one that comes first here. So on this one, g is the main function. G is going to be outside, and f is going to be inside. Now if you notice, when I changed from the left side to the right side, I color-coded it. The color coding is going to be helpful in knowing how to actually find the answers. So if you notice, I have color-coded instructions here. It says you're going to actually evaluate the red part first. You do the inside first, then the outside. So this is going to be done first if f is on the outside, and this one's going to be done first if g is on the outside. Then whatever answer, now we're on to the blue, you use your answer from the red part. You're going to get a number. Okay, it can be positive, it can be negative, it can be a whole number or a decimal, but you're going to get an answer. You use the answer from the red part as the x value then for the blue part. Now these are actually pretty easy problems, and we'll work through some together and they will make sense. And we will look at some that start off in the unusable form, and we will also see some that start off in the usable form. So you won't always have to change them. So let's take a look at a pair of examples. So the one thing that you will be given on all of these is you will be given two equations. So here's your givens. There's your f of x equation, and there's your g of x equation. If you notice, both a and b here are not in the good form for us. They are in the bad form. So I'm going to color code my examples. If you want to do that, that's fine, up to you. So we know that the first letter is always the blue part. So f of, and in this case it's g of. Then we got the red part. G comes second, so g of 2. And the second part here is f of negative 4. And then I'm going to close the blue parentheses as well. So I have my red part on the inside and my blue part on the outside. So as our instructions said, we are going to evaluate the red part first. So the first thing I am going to do on this problem is g of 2. So let's review what this means, because it's been a while since we've seen these. What this means is simply plug 2 in 4x in the g equation. Make sure you're using the right equation. So we're going to go to the g equation. That's this one. And where I see this x right here, I'm going to replace it with a 2 in parentheses. So it's going to look like negative 7. There's your x. So times 2 plus 4. Yes, you are more than welcome to put that straight in the calculator. You don't have to show me any work. You can do negative 7 times 2 plus 4, and you will get an answer of negative 10. So That's step number 1, evaluate the red part. 2, which is your blue, you're going to use the answer we just got as the x value for the blue part. So our blue part starts off with f. So all it means is this answer right here is going to go in the parentheses now. It's now f of negative 10. And so this simply means plug negative 10 in for x in your f equation. It's just plugging in 2 different answers into your equations. So let's look at our f equations. So I'm going to put in this equation a negative 10 right there where x is. So it's going to be 3, then there's x, so parentheses negative 10, finish off with plus 2. And again, put that in your calculator, and you should get an answer of negative 28. This is the only answer I'm looking for. Negative 10 is not an answer to this problem. There's not 2 answers. Negative 10 is used to help us get our final answer of negative 28. So let's do B. So let's go back to the red part. The red part is f of negative 4. So we're going to plug negative 4 into the f equation. So 3, then we got x, so negative 4, then we have plus 2. And again, use your calculator, and you just happen to get negative 10. Again, just a coincidence. That is your first answer. We use this answer with the blue guy. So G, and this answer is going to carry down here, G of negative 10. So here's my G equation. There's my x. So negative 7 times negative 10 plus 4. Put it in the calculator. You should get a positive 74. And put a box around it. That's the only answer I'm looking for. So really not too hard. If you can plug some numbers into an equation, into the correct equation, you're good to go. So let's turn the page and let's look at example 2. Now, make sure you pay attention. I'm changing the equations every time. So this time, f is x squared plus 2, and g is 5x minus 1. Now, looking at these two, these are already in the good form. Okay, there's not that little circle. The little circle is the bad form. Parentheses are the good form. Now, if it's helpful, I'm going to color code it for you again. F of, this one is G of, we'll close the parentheses so I can fill in the inside. The inside is G of 3 here. The inside is G of negative 2 here. So if color coding helps, you can do that on your homework and on your test. So we start with the red. That would be G of 3. So I'm going to put 3 in the G equation. Right there, so it's going to be 5 times 3 minus 1. 5 times 3 minus 1. Put it in your calculator. You should get 14. That's our inside part, or our red part. Switching to blue, we now have F. We're going to drop that answer in the parentheses. So now we're plugging 14 in the F equation. So I'm going to put 14 right here. So it's going to be 14 squared plus 2. 14, and yes, I'm going to use parentheses, squared plus 2. If it's a negative and you're squaring it, you must use parentheses, so you might as well just do it all the time. So go ahead and type that in your calculator, 14 squared plus 2, and you should get 198, and that's our answer. So let's try one last one together, and then you're going to try some examples on your own. So if you notice, first of all, G is here on both of them. There's nothing wrong with that. I didn't type anything wrong. It's okay to use the same equation twice. So let's start with the red part. That would be G of -2. That means we're going to put -2 in the G equation. 5 times -2 minus 1. 5 times -2 minus 1. If you put that in your calculator should tell you it's -11. Now, the blue part is still G, but now in the parentheses is -11. So -11 is going to go in the G equation. So 5 times -11 minus 1. And if you type that one in your calculator, you should get -56, which is our answer. Okay, so I would like you to try both parts of example 3 and both parts of example 4, and we'll see how you did. Okay, so let's see how you did on example 3. This is not a good form, so we need to rewrite this one. Blue first, F comes first, so F of. This one is the good form, but we'll go ahead and color code it, so G of. And then we have the inside part. This one is G of -4, and this one's F of 7. So let's do the red part first. G of -4. We're putting -4 in the G equation. Right here, yes, parentheses are necessary. Parentheses, -4, close parentheses, then squared. If you don't use parentheses, you will not get the right answer, which is +16. So now we're switching to blue. So F of 16. So we're going to put 16 in the F equation. Right here, -2 times 16 minus 6. -2 times 16 minus 6. And you should have gotten a final answer of -38. Hopefully you got that one right. Let's look at the next one and see if you did this part right. So starting with the red part, F of 7. So I'm going to put 7 in the F equation. So -2 times 7 minus 6. -2 times 7 minus 6. If you put that in the calculator correctly, you should have gotten -20. So now we're switching to blue. So we're switching to G of -20. So we're going to put -20 in the G equation. Right there, in parentheses, -20 squared. Parentheses are necessary, and you should get a correct answer of +400. So hopefully you got those two correct. Let's make sure you did example 4 correct. Again, you should have done this one as well already. The first one's the good form. The second one is not. So we're going to start with F in blue. And on this one, the G is in blue. Then in red, we have F of 3. And we have G of 1/2. So starting with our inside red part, F of 3, we're going to put 3 in the F equation. So F, 3 goes right there, 4 times 3 minus 11. And you should have gotten an answer of 1. Switching to the blue part, which is also F of 1. We're going to put 1 again in the F equation. So 1 goes right here, 4 times 1 minus 11 should leave you with negative 7 as your correct answer. And last one, let's make sure you did this one correct, and then we're going to look at one other kind of problem. The red part is g of 1/2. So we're going to put 1/2 in the g equation, and we're going to use parentheses. So 8 parentheses 1/2 squared. That will be 8 parentheses 1 divided by 2 close parentheses squared. And you should get an answer of 2. Then we're going to switch to blue. We're sticking with g though. G of 2. We're going to put 2 in the g equation. So 2 is going to go right there. 8 parentheses 2 squared. Type it in your calculator. Hopefully you got a correct answer of 32. So that's what a majority of your homework is, but we do have one last topic that we need to talk about. The last lesson we talked about inverses. Now, we can use the stuff we are learning today to prove two equations are inverses. And so let's write down a definition. Functions f of x and g of x are inverses if f of g of x equals x and g of f of x equals x. This is going to involve what we were doing, but we're not going to get answers as numbers. We're going to be using equations. So these are definitely a little trickier. So we're going to go through two examples together nice and slow. So our goal is when we do, and yes, you have to do both. You have to do this one and this one, and the goal is you always want x as your answer. So let's take a look. Determine if f of x equals 4x minus 8 and g of x equals 1/4 x plus 2 are inverses. So we have to do both f of g of x and g of f of x. So the first one we are going to do is f of g of x. Now that's not the helpful form, so we are going to rewrite it using red and blue. So blue is going to be f, and red is going to be g of x. So what this means, these are the tougher ones. This means right here, this whole thing, we're going to put the g equation in place of x in the f equation. In other words, this entire thing, that's the g equation, it's going to go in the f equation where x is. It's going to take that guy's place in parentheses. So it looks like this. 4 parentheses, because there's x. In the parentheses, I'm going to put this entire equation, 1/4 x plus 2. I'm going to close parentheses. Then I still have to finish the f equation, minus 8. So g here is inside of the f equation. So now we're in algebra land. So the first thing you should be thinking is, let's distribute. We're going to take 4 and distribute it to both of those. Pick up your calculator. 4 times 1 divided by 4 leaves you with 1x. And 4 times 2 leaves you with plus 8. And we still have this minus 8 that we're going to bring down. Well, after we distribute, the next thing you should be thinking is combining like terms. Well, that would be this guy and this guy. Well, what happens when you have a positive 8 and a negative 8? They should cancel. So those two cancel, and what's the only thing we have left? X. And that's exactly what we want. We want to get X left over. Now that's only half the problem. We got to do the other side. We have to flip-flop these two. So we need to look at g of f of x. Again, that's not helpful to us. So the blue part is g, and the red part is your f. So this time what this means is put the f equation, because that's red, in place of x in the g equation. So this time, I'm going to erase my little markings up here. This time I'm going to put the entire f equation in place of x in the g equation. Right, like that. So we're going to start with g, 1/4. There's x, so parentheses, 4x minus 8 plus 2. And just like the other one, we're going to start by distributing. 1 divided by 4 times 4x. Your calculator should tell you this is a 1x. And then 1 divided by 4 times negative 8. Your calculator should tell you is negative 2. And then we still have plus 2. As we learned or reviewed, when you have a negative 2 and a positive 2, opposites cancel. That leaves us with x, which is what we wanted. So, determine if they are inverses. We would say, yes, they are inverses. And yes, you have to do both ways to prove that. So let's take a look at the last example. Again, we're going to do this one together because these are a little tougher. Determine if f of x equals x squared plus 3 and g of x equals the square root of x minus 3 are inverses. So let's start with f of g of x. So the blue part is f. The red part is g. So g is going inside of f. So g is going in place of x right there. So what it looks like, there's your x. So right away, parentheses. Square root of x minus 3. Close parentheses. Don't forget the squared. Plus 3. So, what happens when you have a square and a square root? Because we've talked about this. You should remember that squares and square roots cancel. So this guy and that guy cancel. So we're left with x minus 3 plus 3. And so you're looking now, and you should think, well, those also cancel, because one's a negative 3 and one's a positive 3. So we're left with x, which is what we wanted. Let's go the other direction. G of f of x. We're going to rewrite that. G is blue, and f is red. So this means f is going to go inside of g. So let's erase my previous markings. So f is going to go in place of g. So right there. So our G equation starts off with a square root. Yes, that's important. Then we see x, so we're going to replace it with x squared plus 3. And then we still have minus 3. Now, this one, don't cancel the wrong stuff in the wrong order. We have to stay underneath the square root first. So underneath the square root is this stuff. Those parentheses don't need to be there. So we're going to go ahead and rewrite it without parentheses. The first thing you should be able to cancel are the 3's because they are right next to each other. That leaves us with the square root of x squared. Now you can cancel the square root and the square. Couldn't do it up here because the 3's were in the way. You had to do it down here. Those two cancel. We're left with x. Since we got x on both of them, we would write, yes, they are inverses. And that is the end of the lesson.